What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be talking about Pulsechain and Pulseex, and more specifically, looking at them through the lens of stablecoin dominance, giving us a better view of where the Pulsechain ecosystem is at in relation to the entire cryptocurrency market. Remember to subscribe to the channel. Let's get to 13K. 12.2K, I believe, is the next stop. And check out the sale at cyphers.io. We will be raising prices here shortly at the end of the month, so make sure to snag your dream website now at these lowered prices before prices go up. So this is a chart that many of you may not have seen yet. It's one of the more underrated ones, in my opinion, and one of the ones that should be a tool in your tool set when navigating crypto, altcoins, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Pulsechain, whatever. And this chart specifically is USDT dominance plus USDC dominance. And an obvious question to ask is, why not include DAI, stablecoin dominance? Because we're looking at stablecoin dominance here as a whole. So this is more or less a proxy. And the reason for not including DAI is, if you look at any coin ranking site, top 100 coins by market cap, you can see that Tether, USDT, has about a market cap of 150 billion. USDC about 60 billion, so already you have 210 billion dollars there, 211 or so in market cap. And if you look for DAI, it's actually smaller than you might think, right? It's about a 3 billion market cap. Now that's not a small number by any regards, but compared to 211, it adds a single percentage point of difference. So more or less, this is a good enough chart to look at, but you could also add plus DAI.D, which is DAI dominance. Usually it's just the coin symbol like USDT, dot with a period, D, to get this chart in TradingView. And you can also do formulas, which is how we added USDT dominance plus USDC dominance. So this is a good enough measure of stablecoin dominance for me, because DAI makes up such a small part of a chart like this. And immediately, when looking at this chart, you can see something that stands out pretty well, right? Is this uptrend on these lows. Starting from July 2019, mind you, this is a weekly chart. So this is very long-term there's a lot of data, right? It's very long-term since 2019. So about 6 years of data right here. And I like to look at this chart on the linear scale. It's just easier to navigate, in my opinion, but feel free to do your analysis on the logarithmic scale. So what's interesting about USDT dominance is, if you think about it, right? Just think about it for a little and try to come up with what this sort of a chart would represent. So stablecoin dominance, right? If you didn't figure it out by now, while I was taking my sip of water, goes up and peaks when cryptos are low, because if people are sitting in stablecoins, they're probably not sitting as much in Bitcoin, Ethereum, altcoins, etc. So whenever you see stablecoin dominance go really high, for example, the high we had over here, not comparing, but adding USDT and USDC dominance, you can see it spiked up all the way to about 16.7%. That's pretty high. That means roughly 1/6 of all of crypto was sitting in stable coins, as dry powder, as profit, as whatever you might call it. So if you overlay something like an Ethereum chart, this blue, right? We can make it a different color just to make it a little easier to compare and contrast with the chart underneath. You can see that when Ethereum reached $4,000 for the first time in May of 2021, what did we have? Stablecoin dominance was at these lows, right? It was at the lows of about 3% or so. Now, the first time we hit those lows, funny enough, we were still we were in the middle of our run. Ethereum was only breaking its previous all-time highs by the time we actually started touching this trend line. But starting in January of 2021 all the way to May of 2021, you can see that there was sort of this, it's wrong to call it an accumulation period, but you can see it looked almost like it would have been an accumulation zone for stable coins, which in retrospect was this entire move here, right? So people taking profits as early as, $1,400 ETH, because that was the previous all-time high, right? The chart here doesn't go as far back, probably because of USDC, but you can see that, profit taking went into stable coins, and or rather, right, stable coins were going into Ethereum here, is what I was trying to say, right? More specifically, this move here, right, when Ethereum was at around $400, You can see stablecoin dominance was about 5.6%, and then stablecoin dominance went from 5.6% all the way to 2.5%. So stable dominance cut by about half, and during that, Ethereum went up about a nice, 4x, right? And then stablecoin dominance kind of just flatlined around here, which was during the time we were forming our top. And as you can see here, when stablecoin dominance just popped off and went from about, high twos, about 2.7%, all the way to like 7.5%, that's almost a 3x move in stablecoin dominance. You can see a lot of people fled to stablecoins, and that was represented by Ethereum's drop to about $1,800. Now, I know that this video was supposed to compare Pulsechain and Pulseex to stablecoin dominance, but we're pretty much talking about the same thing here. So if we look at Pulseex, for example, that data didn't start coming in until over here. Let's make Ethereum blue again, just to better see this. I know it's getting messy, but you can see that for the most part, other than that initial Pulseex launch phase, right, Pulsechain launch, it's been pretty much the same as Ethereum, right? Can we have this, for example, to show you? Yeah, like look at this. All right, blue is Ethereum, and green is green is Ethereum, and blue is Pulseex here. Probably should flip that. Let's flip that real quick. It makes a little more sense to my brain. So yeah, you can see that when Ethereum has its peaks, right, 4K ETH, Pulseex was peaking, and then Ethereum had its double top at 4K, and Pulseex had a lower high, but it was still the local highs, right? And right, this low corresponding to that low. So more or less, Pulseex has been tracking Ethereum, obviously in a more volatile fashion. But when I'm explaining USDT dominance and USDC dominance versus Ethereum, know that we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about Pulseex and Pulsechain as well. So I can keep this here just to kind of drive that point home and get rid of some of these drawings. But the idea is simple, right? When stablecoin dominance went to these highs of about 17% nearly, right? Topping off at around 15%, similar to over here, right? Where stablecoin dominance kind of started going sideways at these lows, we were forming our ETH top, right? And when stablecoin dominance started finding this sort of distribution top, you can see that it was a great accumulation zone for Ethereum at around $1,000. So again, USDT dominance and USDC dominance, right? Stablecoin dominance is a really good tool to have in your tool set, in my opinion, because it gives these kind of moves a little bit more clarity in the lens of something different, right? Because you can then ask yourself, okay, well, what is a reasonable place for stablecoin dominance to be at the next market cycle top? And that's a really good question, right? That's the $1 million question. Where will that be? Now, it's anyone's guess, right? And this trend line, mind you, cannot go on forever, obviously. It wouldn't make sense mathematically because it would imply that eventually stablecoin dominance would reach 100%, right? Meaning crypto would go to zero. So this is obviously, albeit long-term, for the past 6 years, it won't hold forever. And you can tell that we obviously already broke it once. This was the first time we actually broke it, went beneath it, closed weekly candles beneath it. But then we, we swept that and then we came right back above, and look at that. Where did we bounce off of? We bounced off of the trend line. And again, this trend line is not perfect. You can redraw it as you wish, but for the most part, the way I drew it here captures this low identically, this one nearly identically, all of this identically and nearly identically. This one was a little off. This one was a little below, this one was above, right? But more or less it captures all these lows pretty well. So where is the next reasonable place to expect a market cycle top to be, and where would that put stablecoin dominance? Well, there are a few places to look at. Obviously, this trend line is one to look at, 6%, which we went to, right? And that was actually the local high, I guess you could say, for Ethereum. It was a local high. But then again, keep in mind that back here last cycle, stablecoin dominance went sideways for about half a year while we were making our top. And then we had a sort of, a higher high on ETH, slightly higher, and a slightly higher high on stablecoin dominance, which is interesting, right? Because in theory, this should be slightly lower, but it wasn't, meaning even though we made a higher high, more people were sitting in stablecoins than they were back here at this lower high, meaning it could have been some big players making this move, if you can kind of see that in the chart. it means that there were less, less stable coins needed to make this high, which is kind of interesting, actually. I don't know if that makes total sense to me. I might have to revisit that later. But it is a divergence of sorts, which could also be an indicator for, like a top signal, you could say. So beyond that, a thing that could happen is, we revisit here and we just bounce around these lows for the rest of the year, and that would be equivalent to something like this, right? A sort of accumulation zone, while Ethereum, altcoins, and the like, run, make their high, set their high, and then the bear market would be in for later, right? And that's assuming that the cycle's not over. Obviously, there are some people that think that. There's a lot of things that tell me that's probably not, but again, this is not financial advice. All of this is speculation and entertainment only. But again, this trend line is the obvious candidate, right? This trend line for where USDC dominance could be at the next market cycle top, right? Because it's gotten a lot of them pretty spot on. For example, let's clean this up a bit, right? Let's just clean everything up, right? Look at that. A low on stables corresponds to a high on crypto, on ETH. This low corresponded to that high, and so on, right? It's double bottom, double top. And even with these, right? Even with this high right here, corresponding to that low, and you get the idea, right? You get the idea. So that trend line is our obvious first candidate. And the next candidate for a stablecoin dominance low for the next market cycle top could be around here, right? Pretty much the range lows of stablecoin dominance, which is about 5%, give or take a couple of basis points. And, if we were to have a blow off top, that would probably imply something like this, right? It could imply something like that, not necessarily, but I could see a scenario where a blow off top would lead to stablecoin dominance, potentially even revisiting as far as, high 3s or low 4s in the percentage dominance arena. So it's anyone's guess, really, but the obvious candidates for where stablecoin dominance could be at the next market cycle top, that includes ETH, that includes Bitcoin, that includes Pulsechain, Pulseex, etc. Again, trend line, it's an obvious candidate, 6%. 5% is the next obvious one because of these range lows, and the next less obvious one would be about 4%, give or take, right? So it's pretty simple when you look at it that way, right? We're at 6.7% now, and keep in mind that even 1% of stablecoin dominance, what did we say it was earlier? About 211 billion, right? So even 1% of all stablecoins would be a little over $2 billion. And it doesn't take much raw capital and liquidity to move market caps up with a sort of coefficient, right? Or an exponent, similar to how Uniswap, you put in, $1 billion into $100 million liquidity pool, you can 100x that price and that market cap. So there is a sort of leverage effect when you look at liquidities to market cap. I believe for Bitcoin and Ethereum back in the day, I haven't redone this calculation in a minute, but it was something like 30 to 40x difference. And there are obviously some higher ratios. Like I think Hex is like 1,000 market cap to liquidity ratio, but I'm going off on a tangent here. The point is these are our ideal candidates for where this chart could be during the next market cycle top, if it isn't already in, right? And that would be about 6%, 5%, or give or take some percentage, some basis points, 4%. So that's pretty much the video. I don't want to make it too long. It's already about 15 minutes. I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you for watching. Remember to subscribe. If you haven't already, about 20% of you are not subscribed. So I'd appreciate it if you would hit that button as well as the like. Leave a comment if you like these kind of in-depth, quick, high-frequency videos. And remember to make sure to check out the Cyphers.io sale to build your dream website very quickly. I actually got a new client recently, and we whipped up 2 of his sites in about 10 days, and they're pretty much done. Just a couple finalizations needed. So that is the speed, and he was very, very impressed. I'm going to add a testimonial section here soon so you guys can see what other people are saying about these sites, but prices will increase soon. at the end of the month, actually. So you have a couple weeks. Would snag yours now before prices go up, so you could get yours at these lower prices. Thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Remember to keep this tool in your tool set, and I will catch you in the next video. Peace.